All right, let's get into it. Japan has this huge goal, right? To go completely carbon neutral. But it's also got a massive problem. There's almost no free land. So where do you even start to build the power plants you're going to need for the future? Well, it turns out the answer might be hiding in plain sight. I mean, just think about it. Japan is super mountainous and incredibly crowded. Every single square meter of flat, useful land is just incredibly valuable. So if your goal is to hit these huge clean energy targets, where in the world do you actually put thousands and thousands of solar panels? The thing is, the answer might not be on land at all. It's on the water. Japan is starting to look at its thousands of reservoirs and irrigation ponds, not just as sources of water, but as, the actual foundation for the power plants of tomorrow. And look, this isn't just some quirky little experiment anymore. A really big business deal just went down that has put floating solar right in the spotlight. It's a signal that this tech is getting ready for the big leagues. Here's what happened. A brand new partnership between two of Japan's energy giants just went out and bought an entire portfolio of floating solar plants. This is their first big move into this kind of technology, and it really shows that some very powerful people are now taking this whole idea very, very seriously. And just look at the heavy hitters behind this thing. We're talking about SMFL Mirai Partners, which is part of the enormous Sumitomo Mitsui financial group. And Shizen Energy, a developer that has over a gigawatt of renewable projects. For both of these powerhouses, this is their first major investment in floating solar. They're clearly placing a big bet. Okay, so what is floating solar exactly? Let's take a quick look at how this stuff actually works. At its heart, the idea is actually beautiful in its simplicity. You take the same exact solar panels you'd see on a roof or in a field, but instead, you mount them on a special structure that floats. You're essentially just building a power plant that sits right on top of the water. And the engineering is pretty clever. First, they sink these heavy anchors into the bottom of the reservoir to hold the whole thing in place. Then, they connect a whole network of buoyant platforms. Think of them like specialized pontoons. And finally, the solar panels get fixed right on top of those. What you get is this huge, secure, floating array that just quietly soaks up the sun and makes clean energy. So, why is this tech such a potential game changer for a country like Japan? Well, it all comes down to a unique set of advantages that almost seem tailor-made to solve some of the country's biggest problems. I mean, just think about the difference. On land, a solar farm is competing for really expensive farmland or space that could be used for development. But floating solar? It just uses the surfaces of ponds and reservoirs that are already there. It's like finding brand new real estate that was right under your nose the whole time. But that's not all. There's a hidden bonus that makes these panels even more effective. It turns out solar panels, just like any other piece of electronics, work better when they're kept cool. Well, floating on water naturally brings their temperature down. That actually boosts their power output compared to a panel that's just baking in the sun on land. It's a true win-win, because the panels also help reduce water evaporation from the reservoir. And by blocking sunlight, they can help stop unwanted algae from growing. And the scale of this opportunity is just staggering. Get this number. All across Japan, there are around 150,000 agricultural reservoirs and ponds. That is just a massive amount of untapped real estate hiding in plain sight. So what does all that surface area add up to in terms of power? Well, according to a report from Japan's Big Tech Development Organization, all that water represents a potential generating capacity of 39 gigawatts. Now, to put that in perspective, that is a truly enormous amount of power, enough to make a serious dent in Japan's carbon-neutral goals. But, of course, it's not all that simple. Building anything on the water brings its own unique set of headaches and, some very real risks that you just can't ignore. For one thing, everything has to be tougher and more expensive to stop it from corroding. And maintenance? It's way more complicated. You can't just walk out to fix a panel. You need boats, and sometimes you even need divers to go down and check on the anchors. Plus, the whole system has to be engineered to handle not just changing water levels, but the full force of extreme weather, like typhoons. And this isn't just a theoretical problem. A 2019 incident at a plant in Japan's Chiba prefecture showed exactly what can go wrong. A powerful typhoon basically ripped the anchors loose, panels were flipped over and smashed into each other, and the damage actually caused a fire. It's a pretty sobering reminder. While the potential here is absolutely huge, the risk of a catastrophic failure is very, very real. The engineering and the safety have to be perfect. So, this is the big question, isn't it? How do you balance this incredible opportunity against those very serious risks? That's the challenge that companies like SMFL and Shizen Energy are now taking on. So let's circle all the way back to that deal we started with. One of the plants they bought is this one, the Otsudaike solar power plant. It's a real-world example, generating just under a megawatt of clean power while floating quietly on a reservoir. This is what that future actually looks like, one pond at a time. Now, that new 18.6 megawatt acquisition might sound like a lot, but it's really just a drop in the ocean. The total potential capacity is estimated at nearly 39,000 megawatts. It just goes to show you, as big as this first step is, we are at the very, very beginning of this journey. Which really leaves us with a fascinating question to chew on. Could these quiet, functional ponds, these things that have been part of Japan's landscape for centuries, actually become the unlikely powerhouses for its 21st century energy needs? The story is just getting started, but it's a future that is definitely worth watching. Thanks for joining us.